For years, I prided myself on being a great communicator. I created dozens of courses, trainings, and masterclasses on this topic. This YouTube channel has over 200 videos about being a better communicator. But what I realized is that as good of a communicator as I thought I was also a people pleaser. And I didn't have this realization until recently that I was a people pleaser. And I realized that it was actually having a detrimental effect on my life. So I decided to do something about it. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're constantly people pleasing and avoiding conflict and really looking for others' approval, and you know that it's really not great for your relationships or your self-confidence, and you want to change it, sit down and stay tuned, because in this video I'm going to share with you 3 simple tips that I use to stop being a people pleaser. Hey guys, my name is Paul Macetta, and I am a researcher and a publisher in the field of human communication. So if you like learning about human communication, then go ahead and consider subscribing. And if you do, hit that bell notification so you get updated when I release more videos like this, because it really does help the algorithm. So let's jump right into today's video. So like I said, I've been studying human communication for probably the past 25 years. I've been teaching it professionally for the past 14 years. And it is a subject that I consider myself better than most in understanding. In fact, I consider myself an expert, although that word is like kind of cringy to actually say out loud. But I do consider myself an expert when it comes to human communication, meaning that I have a better than average understanding when it comes to this topic. And so this is something that I've devoted the better part of my adult life to getting really good at and being able to help other people do the same. And it wasn't until very recently that I had this realization that I was actually a people pleaser. So I was one of these people that never wanted to let other people down. I always found myself saying yes to requests that maybe I really didn't want to say yes to, or maybe I found myself agreeing with people really at first glance or surface level without really investigating or deeply analyzing what they were saying to figure out if I really did agree with what they were saying. Or maybe in a coaching situation, a client presented something to me that they were so passionate about and they believed in so much, and I just kind of accepted it at face value and allowed that to influence my decision making on the topic. In fact, now that I think about it, how this happened specifically, like one of the eye openers for me was that I was on a call with a client, and the client was explaining something to me, and they were explaining their outlook on this particular thing to me. And what I allowed that to do was influence the way I thought about the situation. So I took on the thoughts and beliefs and opinions that they were having about this particular thing, and it caused me to make a misjudgment where I started guiding them based on what they told me. And when we hung up the phone and got off the call, I started thinking about it, and I started to really replay the situation in my head. And I said, you know what? Now that I think about it, what I told them was wrong. It's not that the advice that I gave them is not the advice that I would take myself for my own business. And so as a coach, I will never give a client advice that I myself would not follow. I just think there's a problem with that. And so the old me would have been like, oh, but I can't call them back because that's going to make me look stupid, and it's going to make me look indecisive, and I'm going to look like I'm flip-flopping. And then what I said to myself was, look, the most important thing here is that I share with this client what I truly believe is going to be beneficial for their business. And if that happens to be different than what I initially told them, and that makes me look like I'm flip-flopping, and that makes me look like I'm not sure about what I'm saying, then so be it. But I know that I need to share this opinion, this information, and this new insight that I now have about their business. I got to share it with them because I know that this is going to be the thing that helps them the most. And so I just picked up the phone, I sent them a little voice note, and I said, hey, listen, during our conversation the other day, I realized that I've had a complete 180 in terms of the advice that I gave you. And I think what happened was when we got on the call, I heard you out and I listened to what you said, and I allowed your opinion and your outlook on the situation to influence my outlook on the situation. And as a result of trying to be efficient with our time, because we were on a very strict time schedule, I said the combination of being on a strict time schedule and allowing my thoughts and my judgment to be influenced by what you said. Again, this has nothing to do with you. Make no mistake, I am not saying that it's his fault. I'm saying I allowed myself to be influenced by what he said, and that negatively impacted my judgment. But I've thought about it, and I realize that that's not what I think is the best course of action for you, and I'd like to jump on one more call and tell you exactly what I think you should do. And he was super appreciative of it, super thankful, just happy that I was even thinking about his business on my own time. Like, I was driving my car and I was still thinking about this interaction that I had with him. And so I felt it was very important for me to tell him that information. And so the lesson that I learned from that interaction was the reason why I would not have necessarily went back and changed what I said in the past was because I was too worried about how it was going to make me look. And this time I prioritized what was best for the client, not what was best for my ego or my self-image. And what I learned is that lots of times when you give people advice, especially in coaching or consulting, you might have to break some hearts. Like, you might have to say some things to people that they don't necessarily want to hear, or they might not like you in that moment for telling them that thing. But if you know that that's the thing that could actually help them, you got to tell them. And so that really opened my eyes to the fact that I was a people pleaser, for a very long time. I started going back and looking at different incidences, not so much that, because overall, I think I have been pretty strict with telling people what they need to hear on coaching calls. But in other aspects of my life, I was just too passive and too accepting. And really, when I started looking at the intention behind a majority of my behaviors, it was to be accepted and to be liked and to be admired. Now, look, deep within all of us is this desire to be accepted and admired. Like, we all want that. But when you're not being true to yourself because you want those things, well, that's not good, because really what you want, what you're doing is you're sacrificing who you really are, for this fake version of yourself that you think people will like more. And so I read a lot of books on this topic. I'm happy to share more of them with you in more videos if you guys find value in this topic. But one of them that I read was a book called The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitaki Koga. It's like a Japanese book. The Japanese authors wrote this book. And most of the book is like a parable, but it contains some deep lessons. So the first thing that I learned was that I am not my past and you are not your past. And so oftentimes people-pleasing behaviors stem from childhood experiences, which lead us to seek approval later in life. So I grew up as an only child, and there were lots of times in my childhood where I felt very lonely and very different from other people because almost every single person that I knew had siblings. In fact, my mother has 15 brothers and sisters. So I have 40 cousins on my mother's side of the family. And almost every single one of my cousins has siblings. It's just me and one other of my cousins that are only children. So pretty much everybody else has siblings. So what this caused in me was like this feeling of being different. And when you feel like you're different than other people, it leads you to seek approval and to seek acceptance because you want to be accepted. You want to be part of the group. You want to feel like you're just like everybody else. And so what this led me to do was a lot of things to get attention, to get acceptance, to get admiration. As a kid, some of those things were like not appropriate. Like I acted up a lot in school to the point that I was so disruptive that I remember in kindergarten, like my memory of kindergarten is being up in a 6th grade classroom in the back of the classroom because I had to be taken out of that classroom and put in there because I was so disruptive. And I think the reason why I was disruptive was because I was looking for attention. And then that carried over, but transformed into other things as I got older, right? Because I wasn't in school and I wasn't in a classroom, but it moved into it manifested in other ways of people pleasing. And so what I realized is that I am not my past. In fact, what I've learned to do is reframe my past. So what I say to myself now is being an only child, yes, it did make me different to people that have brothers and sisters, not different to other people that are only children. But what it did was, I believe, it also gave me a different set of skill sets that I might not necessarily have had if I had brothers and sisters. Because what it enabled me to do was really get a deep understanding of how to communicate with people at a young age, how to make people laugh, how to get reactions out of people, how to bond with people. And the thing is, like, I had to test all of my material in the real world, like out in the open, like out in the wild. Whereas like people that have siblings, they can like do stuff with their brothers and sisters at home and they see what works and what doesn't work and like what's acceptable and what's not. And then they can take those things that they gain from those home interactions and then do them with people outside. Whereas because I didn't have that, all of my stuff was like tested like out in the wild. Like, is this going to work or am I going to make a fool out of myself? And I think that that gave me a deeper understanding of how to communicate and how to connect with people. So I chose to reframe the way I thought about my past. And that empowered me to let go of the belief that I need to please others or feel accepted to be valued. Now again, all of us have a fundamental desire to be accepted. We all want that, but not at the expense of not being who we really are. The second thing that it taught me was to take responsibility for my own life. So people pleasing is usually, oftentimes, it's a way of avoiding conflict or discomfort. But when you take responsibility for your own life, you realize that you can make your own decisions without relying on other people's approval. So it helps you realize that pleasing others out of fear is not a sustainable or a healthy way to live. And it's more fulfilling to take ownership of your own happiness. So I'll give you an example. So I over the past 2 years, I've been going to a mastermind event, and it's a great event, and there's lots of high-level business owners there, and the energy there is great, and the people there are great, and when I leave there, I always feel like I grew as a person. And so the person that runs the mastermind is a foodie like me. He loves to cook, and I like to cook, but he loves to cook. I like to eat more than I like to cook, but I do enjoy cooking. And so one of the things that he wanted to do to make the mastermind a different experience than every other mastermind was to actually cook a home-cooked meal for the participants. And he asked me, he's like, you're a foodie, you like to cook, would you want to help me do this? And so we he's like one step below like a professional chef. This guy lives, breathes, and eats food, super passionate about it, extremely well trained, really great conceptual ideas and execution. And I'm happy to say that we ran like 4 or 5 events where we churned out some world class, like restaurant level style meals, from appetizers, main courses, sides, desserts. Like, in fact, one of the mansions that we were in, we actually had a commercial grade professional kitchen. So it was like a really great experience to actually be on the line and cooking and like in the trenches together, and like, time disappears because you're completely focused on this task. And so at the last mastermind event, he had a schedule conflict and he wasn't going to be there. And he texted me and he was like, hey, how would you feel about spreading your wings and doing all the cooking yourself this time? Like, you'll have a couple of people there that can assist you and help you, but like, this would be all you. And like, the old me, because I felt it a little bit. When I read that message, I started getting like a little bit of like anxiety, because I knew the answer to the question was no, that I did not want to do this, but the discomfort was coming from me having to tell him no, because I'm a people pleaser. I want to be, Paul always comes through, Paul always says yes, Paul never complains, anything we need Paul to do, he does, he's a team player, he's there when we need him, blah, 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 he's got our back, that type of thing. And so I started feeling this like mild like discomfort, like, like, now I gotta tell this guy no, I really don't want to do this. And like, I started going through all these different scenarios in my head. What does this mean? What does that mean? And then I just stopped and I said, you know what, he knows that I'm a team player, he knows I got his back, he knows we've spent enough time with each other over the past 4 years that he knows who I am as a person and what my character is, that I can feel comfortable declining this request without feeling like all of that other stuff is now being sacrificed. Because that's what it was. I started replaying all these scenarios in my head where he's going to think I'm not a team player, I don't have good character, I'm not there when he needs me. But the reality is that we were already at a point in our relationship where I proved that I am all of those things, and I know that I am those things. And me declining this one request should not detract or take away from all those other things about me. And if they do, well, then maybe this just isn't the right relationship. And so I just politely sent him a voice note. I'm better with speaking than I am with texting. I also think texts can get misconstrued, because sometimes when you're just reading words, you don't understand the context behind them. So I just shot him a simple voice note, and I was extremely honest and transparent. I just said, hey, listen, man, appreciate you asking me to do this and having the confidence and the faith in me that I could do this, but I'm going to respectfully decline to do this. Here's the reality. I enjoy cooking. I like eating more than I do cooking, but I love cooking when I'm cooking with him. So I like being the second in command in that context. It's his vision, it's his passion, he sets the precedent. I help him, I'm there to assist him, and we're in the trenches executing. Like, there are certain meals that I cook from scratch, but they're all under his leadership. I do not enjoy and would not enjoy taking all of that on myself, because I just don't have that level of passion that he has for it. And he was like, he wrote me back and he was like, totally understand, appreciate you being candid about this, no problem. And it was like, man, it's like, in the past I would have been so hesitant, like, maybe should I do it? Should I just say yes? And like, for once I evaluated the situation and I was like, nah, this is like something that I don't want to do. And so I'm going to politely say no. And so what I've realized, because I've done this more and more in the past couple of months, is that sometimes when you say no to things, or you give people an answer or an opinion that's different than than where they're coming from, they respect you more. And so taking responsibility for your own life and your own actions and realizing you can make decisions without needing other people's approval, super important. And then number 3, what I learned is that freedom comes from accepting rejection. Like, they describe this concept of separating tasks, which is like understanding that you can't control how others feel or think about you. So sometimes people pleasing is a form of trying to control other people's perceptions about you to avoid rejection. But the freedom comes from accepting that rejection is just a natural part of life, and like it doesn't diminish your worth. So by embracing the possibility of being disliked, you allow yourself the space to act in ways that are true to your own values without seeking approval. So I tie this very closely to like a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu analogy. When I first started training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu 12 years ago, I went in with a very healthy mindset. And the mindset was, I'm new to this, I have no athletic background, never played sports in my life, and so for the first year or two, I'm probably going to get destroyed by everybody that I train with. And so I walked into that situation with a very small ego. Like my ego almost wasn't there. And so I was like, I'm probably going to get destroyed this first 1 or 2 years, and that's fine. That's part of the game. All good. And so knowing that and understanding that allowed me to train in such a way where I built up my defense and my ability to defend submissions very well. Now, of course, in the beginning, I was getting tapped left and right nonstop. But then as time went on, I started to learn to defend submissions. And what this ability in my defense gave me, as I grew, remember, this is over a 12-year period, but as I grew, it gave me the ability to have confidence when I train. The confidence to do what I want to do when I want to do it, to implement my game, and to not worry about being submitted. Now look, if I get submitted, I get submitted. It's a sport. It's not the end of the world. But of course, the object of the game is to submit your opponent and not get submitted. But oftentimes what happens is people will not take chances or take risks in jiu-jitsu to submit their opponent because they're afraid they're going to get submitted. But most of that went away for me because I spent and invested so much time in getting submitted and then learning to defend submissions. So it's the same thing here. It's like if you're so afraid of rejection that you never actually say what you want to say or do what you want to do, you never take those chances because you're afraid of rejection, then oftentimes you're going to miss out on some of the most rewarding opportunities that life has to offer because you're afraid of getting rejected. Whereas if you just get rejected a few times and you go through it, you kind of learn like, okay, it's part of life, like it's going to happen, it's not the end of the world, onward and upward, and maybe you learn from getting rejected. Maybe you learn different approaches that reduce the chances of you getting rejected, but you would have never learned them if you didn't get rejected. And so all that is to say is that freedom comes with accepting rejection, and rejection is a part of life. And if you have something that you believe in, something that you want to say, something that you believe is near and dear and true to your heart, and something you believe to be true, but you're hesitant about saying it because you're afraid you might get rejected, learn to move past that. So these are the first 3 big takeaways that I've learned in terms of like not being a people pleaser anymore. And I'm happy to say that this has improved my relationships and my self-confidence in ways that I never thought possible. So guys, if you enjoy this type of content, let me know. I'll certainly put more of it out. I'll share more books that I've read on this topic. If you enjoy this type of content in general, go ahead and subscribe and hit that bell notification so you get updated when I release more videos like this. And hey, let me know in the comments, what do you guys think? A lot of people that I know are the opposite of people pleasers. They don't care about what anybody thinks and they just say what they want. Are you one of those people? Are you a people pleaser? Are you in the middle? Have you found stuff that works for you? Would love to know. I'll see you in the next video.